Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hi, this is Nick Anastasiou, story editor on Star Wars The Clone Wars and Star Wars Bad Batch. And you are listening to Aggressive Negotiations.
Welcome to a galaxy far, far away where your guides, myself, Jedi Master John Mills, and my esteemed compatriot are waiting to take you on a deep dive into the bright and dark corners of the Star Wars galaxy. And that companion on this journey is my dear friend, Jedi Master Matthew Rushing. Matt, of course, welcome back, all that stuff. How you doing? What's the stock prices? Have you bought Bitcoin or Galactic Coin? Palpatine. Ooh, would Palpatine coin have been a thing? And go.
No, but I do have some old Jedi coin left over.
Oh, that's all. That's all.
Yeah,
worthless.
which only is useful on certain, systems. Luckily, on Endor 2, things really work there where we are tonight. Because I like to think of the fact that, how the DC universe has different Earths. They have Earth 1, Earth 2, Earth Prime, Earth 52. I really feel like this is Endor 2. Like, it's just, it's its own universe. It's a little bit like the Endor we know, and yet different. So,
I sense that there's going to be some horns locking on this discussion, which I look forward to because this is Aggressive Negotiations. And I also look forward to hearing from everybody over on the nerdparty.com/contact. And of course, you can reach out to us online at the Jedi Masters on Twitter. The Nerd Party is on Instagram and Facebook. And I don't think we're on anything else yet, but who needs to be? We're fine. We're fine. We're all fine here now. Thank you. How are you? So we're talking about yet another vintage collection Star Wars thing that's been released on Disney Plus. A TV movie from 1985 called The Ewoks Battle for Endor, starring esteemed actor Wilford Brimley and Cian. I forget. I don't know how to pronounce the Celtic first name. Phillips, who was a Bene Gesserit mother from David Lynch's Dune in 1984. And, of course, Warwick Davis reprising his role as Wicket. And also returning as Sindel, Aubrey Miller. And this time, a whole new cast of characters, actually. A whole slew of new characters and villains and locations, something much larger in scope than Caravan of Courage. So, Matt, it seems silly to ask this, but let's just go ahead and get the formalities out of the way. Did you encounter this on television at the time that it was released back in 1985?
I didn't. So this is definitely one that this was the first time that I've ever seen it. Of course, really interesting to get into this, especially on the heels of, the first Ewok adventure film, and Caravan of Courage. And, very, I would say this is very different than the first one, and in many ways. So,
Yep.
and in some ways that's a welcome change. And I think, So did you watch this one when it first came out?
Of course. And I think I said the same thing around Caravan of Courage. Look, I was just starting to age out of Star Wars, the first phase of Star Wars in my life. You love something as a kid, and it's a part and parcel of your life. And then you get the Ewok movies and the cartoons, and you're starting to get a little bit older, and your friends are more into Van Halen and those things like that. And so this is right around the time my interest was waning. I did watch it, though, because, of course, it was Star Wars. I was still very interested. And I remember seeing it at the time as a young lad and being really put off by the fact that the Ewoks spoke, or rather, Wicket spoke English, or Galactic Standard, or Arabesh, whatever you want to say, in this one. That immediately put me out, even when I was a kid, because I understood this to be a prequel. And my first thought was, well, wait a minute, if he can understand and speak English, how does that work? How's he going to forget all of that by the time Leia shows up? And have a faint memory of my dad being annoyed that I fixated on that for a little bit. But enjoying it overall. Wasn't nuts for it, but I thought I was like, okay, like if this had been the first Ewok movie, I think I probably would have reacted better. Mm-hmm. It would have kept my my attention better. But Great. With this being your first viewing of it, your first ever viewing of it, I'm dying to know what you thought.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think I really do. I came to this realization. This really feels like Endor 2. Like it's not the same Endor that we know, and mainly because so much of it looks so different than the Endor we see at all in Return of the Jedi, and kind of compartmentalizing definitely helps, I think, the film for me in my mind. That these are not the same places. It's almost like it's a story based on the place that we saw.
Now, see, I want to touch on this though, because much like the first, this actually goes off more than the first one in terms of having more diverse locations, as it were, and. You even see mountains in the background in one shot where there's snow on top of them. Mm-hmm. And we've always approached Endor from the perspective of, the forest moon. It's all a giant forest because the original trilogy of Star Wars was known for the single biome location. But is it really that much of a hurdle? Like, to believe that Endor had parts we hadn't seen that were just on the other side of the ridge or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a huge issue, right? I mean, it's not like this is canon or anything. So, but to me, Endor, because it never looks like what we know, it does feel incongruous with what we've gotten before. Like, because the forest never looks like the massive redwoods that we know from, Northern California, where they shot, the actual footage for Return of the Jedi. Here again, like the first movie, it's just Skywalker Ranch in that area. And there are some areas that almost get there, but on a whole, too, then, I mean, there's so much of this place that just doesn't look familiar. And again, it's fine. Like I kind of just compartmentalize it almost as if this is a story that maybe Ewoks tell themselves, about these adventures that happened. So it's more in that fairy tale area to which we talked about in the first episode.
But see, the thing is, I'm fascinated about this, right? Because I don't even see, like, there are other reasons that this isn't quote unquote canon or what have you, but for me, it's just not a leap. Like it's just very interesting to me, specifically because it's okay if the woods look a little different somewhere else, or if there's variation in their grasslands once they crest the hill or when they get to higher elevations or something like that. And so it just becomes one of those things where it just makes sense to me that there would be different locations like this throughout Endor. Now, how close are they to them? You could argue, well, that's a little too convenient, but then I'm able to just they walked, the commercial break compressed the 12 hours of walking that they did or something like that. I mean,
I'll preface this by saying too, I remember we had a disagreement back when Star Trek Discovery first came out, right? And I had a massive problem with Star Trek Discovery, mainly because of the look and the feel of the show being completely antithetical to the original series, right? And for you, that wasn't necessarily the issue or the problem you had with the show. I've always been much more a person when it comes to like a look and a feel that's really important to how I feel about something and its place in a fandom.
But see, let me turn this on its head a little bit then, right? Just because it's a fun topic. Now, notice we're not talking about Battle for Endor proper yet. This is just something which might say something about the discussion to come. Who knows? But in expanded universe, it was accepted for a time that there was at least some natural part of Coruscant. However, on screen, all we ever saw was, giant skyscrapers and city planet and stuff like that. But I think it was at the poles that they had mountains. Mm-hmm. And then there was some beach area, I think, at one point because wasn't that the one where Luke built a castle out of sand or something using the Force? That might have been in Crystal Star, which was
that. So
Crystal Star, which was there's
a reason everybody forgot that. Yeah,
that was a gem. But would you have rejected it, say, if after the prequels you found out that on the other side of the planet that you hadn't gone to, right? We get to know the closed down industrial area that Dooku goes to in Attack of the Clones, which is a little bit different. Would you have rejected it if they had something in the Clone Wars where you found out that there was some natural part of Coruscant that we just had never seen up to that point? Would that have been a cause for, well, wait a minute, no? Or if you found out that there was an Oasis part of Tatooine somewhere?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, not particularly. I mean, again, what is on screen in the films or the Clone Wars or whatever, in fact, in the Clone Wars, they actually show the Memorial Plaza. That is the place where the last mountain of Coruscant is, sticking out. That's one. It's in that Satine episode where she's being hunted on Coruscant, and Obi-Wan. That's that same plaza there, and that's actually the traditional spot where the last mountain. It's not covered up, So, so yeah, that's been a part of Star Wars for a long time. But I mean, there's always things that we can add to fandoms, right? And I think the thing that would have helped, I think, it just would have been great for them to have gotten some scenes in either of these in those spaces, so that even if it was just you send a couple guys up there with cameras to get plate shots, to insert people into, just so show maybe some progression from what we knew to the lighter forest to the plains, I think just would have been nice.
I get that. And I think that is an artifact of when you're dealing with medium, which at the time you had the commercial breaks.
Right.
And you had the mandated thing, it was sort of a reset. You were used to, I mean, it's easy to forget what the commercial break used to do for us, where there would be a leap after the commercial break, and your brain would sit there and say, oh, that's just, I didn't see that part. And you just rolled with it. You didn't care. Like, it was just a staple of, and it wasn't bad storytelling. It was just sort of an accepted cheat that everybody had.
Yep.
And, but to your point, I think that this winds up becoming another interesting artifact in the sense that it's definitely from a bygone era. And so it no longer translates to the way we understand, televised content. Like I watched this time with my youngest, and she loved it. She thought it was terrific.
That's cool.
Which made me happy. But I had to explain to her at one point, because it's pillar boxed, which God bless them for preserving the original aspect ratio, because I would have had such a nerd boy flip out moment. But I had to explain to her, that's the shape the TVs were in. And then I demonstrated for her on our TV, this is how big I would have watched this on. And she was having trouble processing, why would your television have been so small? Was it broken? And I was like, no. And it's not like we don't have like a big 72-inch television or anything. It's just we take for granted, that we're in the era of the 24-inch computer monitor, which is larger than the television I watched all of the Next Generation on in its first run.
Yeah.
So like, I think in a sense that these sort of location hurdles are less accentuated when kids are watching it on a 10-inch television screen.
Oh, sure.
Cathode ray tube.
No, I agree with you.
No, but that I think gets to, so that I don't belabor it later, that again gets to why this vintage collection thing I don't think is going to have the traction that they think it will, because it doesn't translate to the modern day. These are curios. They're not enduring, as it were, because they were created for an older era. Now, before people think I'm stomping on it here, I do think Battle for Endor is significantly more successful in terms of a cohesive script and characters and entertainment value than Caravan of Courage. Do you agree with that, or do you not?
I do believe that this is much more cohesive. It feels more like something that fits better. Part of that is this is shorter by about 12 minutes or so. It's like 136, I think, in length instead of like 140 something. So 145 or whatever. So, with the credits and everything, it's definitely, probably 130. So that's much better. And the storytelling is much more linear, much more progressive, in the sense that it follows a great progression for the story. There's never a moment where there's too many scenes where you're just like, why are they doing this scene? It just feels like the worst filler. None of those things where I had an issue, with the first film really translated to this one as much. So all credit to them for being able to find a way to make a much more cohesive story, which, I would definitely just say I would watch this over Caravan of Courage anytime, just because of that.
It definitely seems, because one of the things, you mentioned about Caravan of Courage was Lucas wanted to do like a 30-minute show, a substantially shorter show. And the network was like, no, we want a full thing. And so there's very much that sense of stretching. I think that probably Battle for Endor benefits from the fact that they said, okay, this is what we're doing, so right to that. I think the production value is also better. I think that the design is... there are so many things I looked at and I said, oh, yeah, that's definitely Joe Johnston. Oh, yeah, that's definitely a character sketch that he used and stuff like that. And so things felt more organically, a part of the galaxy far, far away, as it were. And an observation that I wanted to get your thoughts on, friend of the show, Galandra1 on Twitter, shared his insights that this is sort of a proto-Willow. This is sort of a rough sketch of what Willow was going to become. And so I watched it this time with that in mind, and I wanted to know whether you agree with him about that or if you think that he's off base.
I do think there's some truth to that. It does almost feel like, in some ways, this story is, being played out. And what's interesting is that, because, you have the little girl who gets stolen and, the Ewoks and everyone have to go rescue her and everything. And so there is a part where you could almost tell that part of the story was lifted and put into Willow in some ways, or just accentuated. Yeah, I mean, I once he said that, and then I watched it, it definitely made sense, having covered Willow for the 602 Club last year. So, and it is interesting because, Lucas is definitely somebody who does that too. Obviously, he did THX, right, his student film, and then he did his, full version of THX, for the studio. And then, of course, Star Wars becomes this thing where, he does a story and then he just expands on that. And so he definitely is somebody who's not afraid to play around with stories and refine. And this being, I guess, Willow, 0.05 is, yeah, I think that works. So,
yeah, I mean, you have the big fearsome general, you have a witch, you have...
I mean, would we call him fearsome?
For what it is, yeah. I mean, this is very much the production feels very much like the type of movie Disney used to make live action. It really does. It feels like the stuff that you used to see on Sunday nights for the Disney, the Wonderful World of Disney movies that they would throw out there, or the Don Knotts stuff, where it's threatening in a kid-friendly sort of way. It's not like Darth Vader, who's going to thrill or terrify even adults. It's that gruesome monster general who's rough and tough and tumble.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I definitely think the general's name was Tarak.
Yeah,
Tarak, I think, does fit the bill with that. What's very interesting though is I was so interested by the fact that they used these masks as opposed to trying to do makeup and a blend, and I'm guessing it has to do with cost. But yeah, I mean, I thought the character designs were pretty effective. I think that for a kids movie, these villains are extremely effective and fearsome. I know that my kid, she wasn't scared of them, but she knew bad guy, and she get the bad guy. And, when he's basically burned into a statue of cinder, that's pretty intense,
A statue of Sindel.
Yeah. Well, not. Yeah, I mean, I do. I think that this is, I think that Wilford Brimley as the frontier settler, the reluctant hero, that's very much got that Western vibe to it. I think that it's got, actually, I got to ask you, the quote-unquote Jar Jar character of this is Teak, the fast-moving little cute fuzzy guy. What was your reaction? Was he an annoying character? Was he a good character? Did you get a chuckle out of him at all?
I think I'm just kind of so used to those characters being in Star Wars, that I didn't really have a negative or a positive reaction. I was just like, oh, okay. I didn't have a strong reaction to him one way or the other. I will say, for the most part, I think they kept the annoyance level for him very low, which is impressive, for that type of character. And he doesn't make really annoying sounds, or, he doesn't really talk, so there isn't a lot of annoyance. And his speed and everything they used effectively, I think, in the story as well. So all in all, I think he's a relatively, of all the new characters I think we get in here, he might be the most successful, I think.
So let me ask you, because this always becomes a very fraught topic for people, especially those of us who are parents and everything. In the very beginning of the movie, Sindel's family is murdered in front of her. Do you think that's a little intense for this, or do you think that's, just par for the course for the fairy tale? You're going to see, the central character is going to see their parents murdered, and that's just going to be what it is.
So they didn't do a good job of making it clear, like, that her brother dies, because, her brother pulls the mother into one of the huts, and then you never see whether or not they actually die or not, and then we just assume that they're dead, and I kept expecting them to come back. So
it's the lights go out. Remember, they have the bracelets that
right. I know,
bracelet and the lights
but I
go
didn't
out.
necessarily expect that to be the case, to be truth. Again, I just expected them to come back later, because we didn't actually, see them die on screen the way we did basically her dad. So I kind of expected at least her brother to come back at some point. So I was very shocked, actually, that they went ahead and killed everyone, and I was like, wow, it's the same type of thing almost where, in The Lion King, Simba watches his dad die, talk about traumatizing, so yeah, this is definitely, I think, much more aligned with the things that we would see in films of the 80s and early 90s, where we're not peddling fairy tales to children in the sense that bad things don't happen to people, right? And in some ways, I think I really appreciate that they're willing to go there. Again, she's not really good enough to pull my heart with actual emotion, so I never really feel their deaths the same way that maybe like your youngest daughter watching this might kind of feel that, because it's a younger age.
See, I'll say that I'm a very easy sell for that sort of thing.
Like Sunday morning.
The scene where the dad is telling her, "Hey, you remember that story I told you about? The baby bird had to leave the nest, and you have to go on your own." And he's basically telling her, in his own way, "I'm not making out of this. You got to go. You have to leave, and grow up now." A scene like that, especially when it involves a father and a daughter, that'll get me 100% of the time. And I thought that scene actually played really well. It's probably more a testament to the recast father is it's Paul Gleason, the principal from the Breakfast Club. That's probably his most famous role. But he is very good. They don't bother recasting the mother. We never actually see her face. She's laying face down on the brink of death when we see her. And it's like, I guess they just couldn't get her or whatever. But just in terms of the story progression, do you think that trauma is... Do you think that they were just trying to wipe the slate clean so they could have this more straightforward story? Or... basically, does this feel like a cheat to hit the reset button, or does it feel like a natural way to start the story?
Well, I mean, they're trying to do a correlation between her and Noah. Noah, who lost his best friend, and she's lost her family, and they're trying to do the whole thing where he's become a little bit hard in his time alone, and she softens him up. And so I know exactly what they're going for. I think story-wise it works. It's kind of a very classic trope to have those type of things happen. Again, I don't think it's really successful. Part of that is that, sadly, Wilford Brimley acts down to the level of Aubrey Miller, and that's really bad for the role. He's really bad in this role. He's just really bad. And it's sad because I think if he had been better, it would have made the whole thing better for me. But every time he's on screen, he's just he's so over the top with his delivery of all the lines, and so in delivering them so cheesily that I'm not buying any of the emotion that I'm supposed to have for the characters. And so whereas the storyline is much better in its progression, it's much better done in every way, it's still very much a bad TV production in the sense of what we're expecting from the actors acting-wise, because none of the actors are good here. None of them.
I think you're being a little too harsh. I don't think that there's anything worthy of like an Emmy award, but I don't think that there's anything that is that egregious.
I mean, Razzie Award level, yeah.
No, I don't. I definitely don't think that. I think that it's fine for what it is. I think that any shortcomings, I mean, it is the director or directors in this case directors are always responsible for the performance that the actor gives, like how well they work with them, how clear the direction is, those sorts of things. It's very rare that you're going to see an actor, you have to see somebody who's like a, Pacino at the top of his game sort of thing, where it's like the director, regardless of how good the rest of the movie is, the director just knows to get out of his way and just let it happen. So I'm not as harsh on the acting. I think that this is a fun sort of thing. Again, I think that the biggest challenge here is that this would have worked better as a series, or a mini series, or like 6 episodes of about a half hour each, to just hit in those sort of story
Right.
arcs, those little mini story arcs. So it feels almost like this is on the cusp of Lucas and company figuring out the right way to tell a story in the different medium. They've told 3 massive successful films, but they're trying to downscale now and do something a little bit narrower. And I think that is probably the struggle that we're seeing, in the final product.
I think to me, I would say if you had just made this an hour, it would have worked much better because you would have cut there. As I said earlier, it does feel much more organic and that's flow, but there are definitely still plenty of scenes that you could trim like crazy to get this down to an hour, and it would just hum much better in the sense of like, you wouldn't feel like there's any lag whatsoever somewhere. None of the scenes feel completely unnecessary like you had, I think, in Caravan of Courage. But I do feel like there are scenes here that just kind of drag on because, we have so much time we're trying to fill up for, what the ABC wanted. So I think an hour, I honestly, somebody could recut this honestly, and I think it would work,
Yeah.
better.
I could see that. I don't think that there's too much else. I think that the matte paintings are obviously better than any TV movie deserves. The production value basically, I think, is better than Caravan of Courage. I think that it's a little bit more confident. But I think that the challenge here is, you're right, this could be cut by another half hour. Some of the stuff truncated, refocused. I don't know if a half hour really could be cut out, but some could be. And I think that it's very, I think the biggest hurdle with this is that it's very rote. The story beats are very
Sure.
expected. You're going to do this, then go to this, then go to this, then go to this. And it's like seeing an old magic trick. When we go to the movies, we see the old magic trick over and over again. And so we just have to judge the magician based on how well they pull off the trick. We know how the trick is done even, and we're just playing along and going with it. Yep. And so, it's just how well did they do it? So the inevitable question here, 2 inevitable questions that I love to ask for these vintage things, is the second one. I'll ask them in reverse order. The second one, the last one I want to get from you, is your rating out of 5 stars for this. But the indelible, unavoidable question that I want answered first: will you ever watch this again?
I don't think so. Unless my wife maybe wanted to see it, which I could never see her wanting to see this. I just don't think I'll ever watch this again. There is not a reason for me. And I find it, it's been a fun process to be able to go back and watch these, just to kind of fill in the gaps. It's kind of the reason, I'd be interested in watching, like, as just a project, Howard the Duck, just to be fascinated to see the things that Lucas has been anyway a part of, right? Just because, I'm a Lucas fan. So, but it's not something to which holds my attention enough to ever really want to go back and watch again.
So what's the rating out of 5?
Honestly, it's the same as the first one. It's 2 out of 5 stars. Even though this is slightly better, I still couldn't give it 2.5 out of 5 because that's still half a good movie, and this is not quite half a good movie. Maybe this is like 2.25 or like 2.05.
You are
really parsing it here. But it's just I really struggled with this, and you pinpointed, I think, perfectly why, is because this one, unlike the first one, is so much more familiar, that in the sense of the storytelling structure, that in many ways that's what meant it couldn't go any higher. It's like they were never going to make this, better than other things I've seen with these same type of storytelling elements, which is, absolutely why Willow is a way better. Obviously, it's a film, and they're spending a lot more money, but just everything about Willow is 100% better than this, So, and it's very similar in story. So, this could be good. Yeah. So, where do you fall in this, especially since this is a rewatch?
I actually wind up, and I think it helps that my daughter watched it with me, so that I saw sort of the intended audience react to it. And so I give it a 2.5. I gave the Caravan of Courage, I gave that 2. I give this 2.5. I do think it's decent. I think it's cute. It's cuter than Caravan of Courage for sure. But just on its own, I think is it great shakes? No. But is it good? Is it competent? Yeah, I do. I think it is. I think that the action scenes work well. I think that there's a very well delivered message for young kids to understand. It doesn't shy away from the idea that the people you love are going to die, and you're going to have to figure out your way in the world from there, which of course is a major theme in Luke's life, in the original Star Wars. But will I watch it again? Only if my daughter wants to. If my daughter says, I want to watch that Ewok movie again, although she kept calling them Wookiees, I had to keep correcting her. I was like, no, Ewok. Wookiee tall, Ewok short. Yes, it's, So I wind up just in that non-committal range where it's okay. Kind of dig it, but I don't love it. And that's fine. It is what it is. So,
yeah.
Well, if anybody wants to steal your power source and have you use your magic to explain to them why you gave a 2-star rating beyond what you've said here, where can they reach you online?
Well, you could burn me at the stake on social media, as is the only reason we go on social media these days, right?
True.
Matt Rushing 02, and the social media platforms. Just search for that. If I'm there, you can follow me. Would love that, and love to talk to you. You can also find me here on the network. Wrapped up Owl Post with Drea Kaufman, as we talked about every single chapter of the Harry Potter series, one chapter at a time. You could find me over on the TFM network doing a few shows. One is called the 602 Club, talking about all of the fandoms we love, not just one. Lots of Star Wars talk over there. Lots of times John Mills is dropping in to talk things with us. It's so much fun. In fact, in the same feed, we did Snyder Cuts together as we talked about everything Zack Snyder had directed, which was a blast as we made that journey together. And we still got one more show left in the hopper for that as his new film comes out soon. So, and then Literary Treks, as well as The Orb over there. Literary Treks is about the books and the comics of Star Trek. And then The Orb is about Star Trek Deep Space Nine. So, John, if people want to catch up with you and see how you found your way towards that extra half star, where can they find you?
Nobody wants to find me. I'm as deeply buried as Wilford Brimley's starship that absolutely nobody saw on Endor all of those years. You can find me as Kessel Junkie if you want to, KESSELJUNKIE. I encourage you to connect with me over on Letterboxd, where honestly I have the most fun on social media right now. And you can find me actually here on the network co-hosting House Lights, where we look at the work of directors from their first films to their most recent. And like Matt said, you can find me hanging out over on 602 Club, and also, there on Snyder Cuts, which is an interesting journey in and of itself. Because, boy, howdy, what a strange year it's been that I get these vintage Star Wars movies and Zack Snyder's Justice League, and what else could possibly be surprising down the corridor for those of us who are film and entertainment buffs. But I feel that I'm starting to ramble, and I'm getting the Jedi beacon calling us back to the temple. So, Matt, I think it is time to close these negotiations.
John, negotiations are closed.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.